How you doing?
A book called The Witches at school, and we did some work with an illustrator for this. And I thought it might be a good idea or of interest to go back over that story because I know some of you hadn't read it. So I'm going to be reading that over these next few weeks and posting them for you to enjoy. Stay safe, do a bit of schoolwork, have some fun, be kind to your brothers and sisters, and helpful to your parents. Hope you enjoy.
A note about witches. In fairy tales, witches always wear silly black hats and black coats, and they ride on broomsticks. But this is not a fairy tale. This is about real witches. The most important thing you should know about real witches is this. Listen very carefully. Never forget what is coming next. Real witches dress in ordinary clothes and look very much like ordinary women. They live in ordinary houses and they work in ordinary jobs. That is why they are so hard to catch. A real witch hates children with a red-hot sizzling hatred that is more sizzling and red-hot than any hatred you could possibly imagine. A real witch spends all her time plotting to get rid of the children in her particular territory. Her passion is to do away with them, one by one. It is all she thinks about the whole day long. Even if she is working as a cashier in a supermarket, or typing letters for a businessman, or driving round in a fancy car, and she could be doing any of these things, her mind will always be whizzing and fizzing with murderous, bloodthirsty thoughts. Which child, she says to herself all day long, exactly which child shall I choose for my next squelching?
Our real witch gets the same pleasure from squelching a child as you get from eating a plateful of strawberries and thick cream. She reckons on doing away with one child a week. Anything less than that, and she becomes grumpy. One child a week is 52 a year. Squish them and squiggle them and make them disappear. That is the motto of all witches. One child a week is 52 a year. Squish them and squiggle them and make them disappear. Very carefully a victim is chosen. Then the witch stalks the wretched child like a hunter stalking a little bird in the forest. She treads softly, she moves quietly, she gets closer and closer. Then at last, when everything is ready, whooshed! And she swoops. Sparks fly, flames leap, oil boils, rats howl. Skin shrivels, and the child disappears. Can you see how those really short sentences really create that feeling inside your tummy of how scary these witches are? A witch, you must understand, does not knock children on the head, or stick knives into them, or shoot at them with a pistol. People who do these things get caught by the police. A witch never gets caught. Don't forget that she has magic in her fingers and devilry dancing in her blood. She can make stones jump about like frogs, and she can make tongues of flame go flickering across the surface of the water. These magic powers are very frightening. Luckily, there are not a great number of real witches in the world today, but there are still quite enough to make you nervous. In England, there are probably about 100 of them altogether. Some countries have more, others have not quite so many. No country in the world is completely free from witches. A witch is always a woman. Now, I do not wish to speak badly about women. Most are lovely. But the fact remains that all witches are women. There is no such thing as a male witch. On the other hand, a ghoul is always a male. So indeed is a bargeress. Both are dangerous, but neither of them is half as dangerous as a real witch. As far as children are concerned, a real witch is easily the most dangerous of all the creatures on earth. What makes her doubly dangerous is the fact that she doesn't look dangerous, even when you know all the secrets. You will hear about those in a minute. You can still never quite be sure whether it is a witch you are gazing at, or just a kind lady. If a tiger were able to make himself look like a large dog with a waggy tail, you would probably go up and pat him on the head, and that would be the end of you. It's the same with witches. They all look like nice ladies. Kindly examine the picture below. Which lady is the witch? That is a difficult question, but it is one that every child must try to answer. For all you know, a witch might be living next door to you right now, or she might be a woman with the bright eyes who sat opposite you on the bus this morning.
She might be the lady with the dazzling smile who offered you a sweet from a white paper bag in the street before lunch. She might even, and this will make you jump, she might even be your lovely school teacher who is reading these words to you at this very moment. Don't worry, I'm not a witch. Look carefully at that teacher. Perhaps she is smiling at you. The absurdity of such a suggestion. Or am I? Don't let them put you off. It could be part of her cleverness. I am not, of course, telling you for 1 second that your teacher actually is a witch. All I am saying is that she might be one. It is most unlikely. But, and here comes the big but, it is not impossible. Oh, if only there were a way of telling for sure whether a woman was a witch or not, then we could round them all up and put them in the meat grinder. Unhappily, there is no such way, but there are a number of little signals you can look out for, little quirky habits that all witches have in common, and if you know about these, if you remember them always, then you might just possibly manage to escape from being squelched before you are very much older.
My grandmother. I myself had 2 separate encounters with the witches before I was 8 years old. From the first I escaped unharmed, but on the second occasion I was not so lucky. Things happened to me that will probably make you scream when you read them. That can't be helped. The truth must be told. The fact that I am still here and able to speak to you, however peculiar that may look, is due entirely to my wonderful grandmother. My grandmother was Norwegian. The Norwegians know all about the witches. For Norway, with its black forests and icy mountains, is where the first witches came from. My father and my mother were also Norwegian, but because my father had business in England, I had been born there and had lived there and had started to go to an English school. Twice a year, at Christmas and in the summer, we went back to Norway to visit my grandmother. This old lady, as far as I could gather, was just about the only surviving relative we had on either side of our family. She was my mother's mother, and I absolutely adored her. When she and I were together, we spoke in either Norwegian or in English. It didn't matter which. We were equally fluent in both languages, and I have to admit that I felt closer to her than my mother. Can you speak more than one language? How very exciting. Soon after my 7th birthday, my parents took me